Ever wonder if reality is less like a smooth movie
Yeah.
and more like, those old flip books where
Yeah.
it's kind of like click, 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 and things are actually jumping from one state to the next?
Right.
Like, what if that's how things actually change from tiny particles to our thoughts, maybe even?
Hmm.
Well, that's what we do here on the deep dive.
Exactly. We take these big ideas and try to, you know, break them down.
Distill them down.
Yeah, make them a little easier to swallow.
Well, and today we have a really interesting pairing, almost like peanut butter and pickles.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Quantum jumping and the law of one.
Oh, wow. Now, those are two topics you don't usually see together.
I know, right? But that's what makes it so fun.
I like it already.
So you've brought some really cool stuff to the table today. Scientific papers about the way electrons act in atoms
Yeah.
and how energy moves around in plants during photosynthesis.
Right. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, we have excerpts from The Law of One by Frey.
Oh, okay.
You
Getting
know,
metaphysical.
yeah, it's exactly talking about this idea of oneness, consciousness, and energy flow.
Sounds like a wild ride.
So our mission for you today is to see if there are any hidden connections between these two worlds.
Hidden connections. I love it.
Right? Like maybe some underlying principles that tie it all together and hopefully spark some of those aha moments.
Those are the best.
Okay, so let's dive in, shall we? And we'll start with the quantum mechanics side of things.
All right, let's do it.
So this idea of the jump in quantum mechanics is really kind of mind-blowing.
It really is. It changed the way we understand the universe at the smallest level.
Right. And we have Niels Bohr to thank for that.
Absolutely. So the first paper you shared, it dives into this concept of quantum jumping in atoms.
Okay, so remind us how that works again.
Sure. So basically, electrons in an atom, they don't move smoothly between energy levels.
They don't.
No, instead, they make these sudden leaps, these quantum jumps from one orbital to another.
Like imagine them teleporting from one spot to the next.
Yeah, good analogy. And when an electron drops down to a lower energy level, it releases a photon.
Oh, right, those little packets of light energy.
Exactly.
And speaking of light, that's where things get really interesting.
Oh, how so?
Well, that same paper points out that the color of almost every element we see is directly tied to these quantum jumps.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
It's wild, right?
So you're saying the specific frequency of these jumps determines the color.
Exactly. Like, think about it. The red of a fire truck,
Yeah.
the green of grass, the blue of the sky.
It's all down to these tiny quantum jumps happening at the atomic level.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. Something so fundamental determining something we see every single day.
It makes you wonder what other connections we might be missing.
Right, like what else is connected in ways we haven't even imagined.
Exactly. Now, the second paper you brought takes us from single atoms to much more complex systems,
Okay, like what?
like the energy transfer that happens during photosynthesis in plants.
Ah, so we're talking about how plants capture sunlight and turn it into energy.
Precisely, and specifically, this paper looks at what happens when you shine laser light on these photosynthetic complexes. Oh, wow. Lasers and plants. Now, that's a combo I didn't expect.
It's cutting-edge research, and they use some pretty sophisticated methods to simulate this energy transfer.
Okay, break it down for us.
Sure, so they combine something called the coherent master equation approach with the non-Markovian quantum jumps method.
Those are some big words.
I know, but basically think of them as powerful tools for tracking how energy moves through these complex systems over time.
Even when it's not a simple straight path.
Exactly. It can get very intricate with lots of twists and turns.
Okay, so they used these methods to simulate energy transfer in something called the FMO complex.
Yes, which is a key part of the photosynthetic process in plants.
And how did their simulation compare to the real deal?
Well, they found that their results matched up really well with more computationally intensive methods.
So it's like finding a shortcut that still gets you to the right answer.
Exactly, a much more efficient way to model these complex processes.
That's great. And what do they learn about this energy transfer specifically?
Well, one of the most interesting findings was how photons interact with these pairs of molecules called dimers.
Dimers.
Yeah, basically two molecules that are linked together within these complexes.
Got it.
And what they observed were these things called coherent oscillations in the energy transfer.
Okay, now I'm lost.
It's like this, imagine the energy isn't just flowing directly from one molecule to the next.
Okay.
Instead, it's like it's bouncing back and forth between them in this very coordinated way.
Almost like a dance.
You have a very precise and synchronized dance, and these oscillations, they continued even after the laser pulse was over.
So it wasn't just a one-time thing.
Nope, it suggests there's this underlying coherence, this organization to the energy transfer, even at this incredibly tiny scale.
That's pretty amazing. So it's not just chaos down there.
Not at all. It points to some fundamental principles of efficiency and order that we're only beginning to grasp.
And who knows, maybe these principles could have applications beyond just photosynthesis.
Exactly. It could
Yeah.
be a whole new way of thinking about energy transfer in general.
Okay, so we have coherent oscillations.
Right.
And the paper also mentioned something about laser detuning.
Yes, that's basically when you slightly change the properties of the laser light.
Okay.
And what they found was that this detuning had a big impact on how the system prepared itself to absorb energy.
So the way the light hits the molecules really matters.
Absolutely. And it turns out that those strongly coupled dimers we talked about,
Right.
they're particularly sensitive to the initial conditions of the light.
So it's all about how it all starts.
Precisely, the starting point can make a big difference in how the whole process unfolds.
Okay, and then there was this other term they used, concurrence.
Ah, yes, concurrence. That's a measure of entanglement.
Okay, entanglement. I think I've heard of that.
It's one of the strangest and most mind-boggling phenomena in quantum mechanics.
I think I saw it in a sci-fi movie once.
Maybe. So basically, entanglement is when two particles become linked together.
Okay.
No matter how far apart they are, like their fates are intertwined.
Like spooky action at a distance.
Exactly. And the fact that their simulation could accurately model this entanglement within these biological systems,
Impressive, right?
it shows just how powerful their method is, and it even opens up the possibility of using lasers to control energy flow.
Oh, wow. So we could potentially manipulate these tiny biological processes with light.
It's a very exciting area of research with lots of potential applications.
Okay, so just to summarize all of this science for you.
Yes.
At the most basic level, energy doesn't flow smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
It changes in these sudden jumps,
Right.
quantum jumps, and these jumps are responsible for everything from the colors we see.
To the way plants capture sunlight and create life.
Exactly. It's a whole different set of rules down there in the quantum world.
A world that often defies our everyday intuition.
Okay, so now let's shift gears completely and dive into the law of one.
Sounds good. A little change of scenery.
So the law of one, it's channeled information from a being called Ra.
Or more accurately, a social memory complex called Ra.
Right, so what's a social memory complex again?
It's like a group consciousness or a collective mind that's evolved over vast periods of time.
So like a hive mind.
Kind of, but with a much deeper level of shared experience and understanding.
Okay, and the law of one, it's all about this principle of unity.
Yes, the unity of all creation. And it explores how consciousness evolves through different levels of existence or densities.
Densities.
Yeah, think of them like different levels of vibration or spiritual awareness.
And the excerpts you brought today, they're from Book 3 sessions, 51 to 75.
Right, which build on the foundation laid earlier in the series.
Okay, so what jumped out at you from these sessions?
Well, one thing that struck me was Ra's explanation for the discomfort the channel sometimes experiences before contact.
Oh yeah, I remember reading about that.
They attribute it to two main factors.
Okay.
First, the channel's own subconscious mind kind of holding back energy.
Like bracing for impact.
In a way, yes, preparing for the influx of energy that comes with channeling.
And the second factor.
The possibility of psychic attack.
Oh wow. From who?
Potentially from entities associated with Orion.
Orion, like the constellation.
Yes. There's a lot more to it, but we can delve into that another time.
Okay, so we have internal resistance and potential external interference.
Right, and it's interesting how this ties into the idea of thought forms.
Thought forms.
Yeah, Ray talks about how our subconscious expectations can actually shape our experiences.
So we're not just passive receivers.
Not at all. Our thoughts and beliefs can influence what we encounter and how we perceive it.
Even in encounters with so-called Confederation or Orion craft.
Exactly. The true nature of the encounter is defined by its effect on the individual.
So it's not just about where it came from, but what it does to you.
Precisely. The impact is key.
Okay. And then there's this whole concept of in-streaming energy.
Ah, yes. This is a fascinating part of the law of one cosmology.
Cosmology.
Yeah, their view of the universe and how it works.
Okay, so tell me about this in-streaming energy.
So it's described as light entering the mind-body-spirit complex through the feet and the base of the spine.
Okay, through the feet. Interesting.
Yeah, and this energy is then filtered and used by these energy centers called chakras.
Chakras, those are those swirling energy points, right?
Exactly, and each chakra is associated with a different color.
So like a rainbow of energy within us.
You could say that, and these chakras, they can become blocked.
Oh no, why?
Well, it can happen for various reasons, but when a chakra is blocked, it disrupts the flow of this vital energy.
So it's like a kink in the hose.
A good analogy, and this can lead to all sorts of imbalances, both physically and emotionally.
So keeping those chakras clear is pretty important.
Absolutely. It's all about maintaining that smooth flow of energy.
Okay, so what else did Ra have to say?
Well, they talked a lot about the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Oh, the pyramids.
Yes, but not as tombs.
Really? What were they then?
Ra suggests they were designed for healing and learning.
Healing and learning inside the pyramids.
Precisely, the king's chamber specifically is mentioned as being for healing practices.
And there's also a chamber below ground.
That's right, and interestingly, Ra mentions a specific apex angle.
Apex angle, like the angle at the top of the pyramid.
Yes, about 76 degrees, 18 minutes.
Okay, and why is that angle significant?
Well, Ra says it's particularly effective for facilitating healing within a pyramid structure of sufficient size.
So it's like the pyramid itself becomes a healing tool.
Exactly, and it makes you wonder if there's something about that specific geometry that creates a resonant energy field.
Like a giant energy amplifier.
Perhaps something to ponder.
Definitely. Okay, and what about the learning that took place in the pyramids?
Well, it was described as a solitary process.
Oh, so no classrooms or teachers?
Not in the traditional sense, it was more about individual introspection and connection with the higher self.
And Ra also talked about space-time and time-space.
Yes, these are key concepts in their cosmology.
Okay, remind me what those are again.
Sure, so space-time is what we normally experience, the physical world. The seen illusion, as they call it.
Okay, and time-space.
It's the unseen realm, the realm of the soul and the higher self.
So it's like the flip side of reality.
In a way, yes, and the mystical pursuit of unity involves transcending these illusory systems.
How do you do that?
By seeking the one through a state of balanced self-awareness.
Balanced self-awareness.
Yes, recognizing both our perceived flaws and our inherent perfection.
So it's about accepting all parts of ourselves.
Exactly, and seeing the divine spark within, even in our imperfections.
That's a powerful message. And what about this spiral energy movement in the pyramid?
Oh yes, that's a very evocative image.
Tell me more.
So Ra describes this spiraling energy that originates near the queen's chamber.
Okay.
And then it moves upwards through the king's chamber, intensifying as it approaches the apex.
So it's like the energy is being drawn upwards towards the tip of the pyramid?
Precisely, like a vortex of energy, and this image of spiraling energy, it appears in many spiritual traditions.
It does.
Suggesting it's a fundamental pattern in the way energy organizes and moves.
And what about the Confederation?
The confederation of planets in the service of the infinite creator.
Okay. What's their role in all of this?
They act as guides and helpers, offering information and assistance to those who call upon them.
So they're like cosmic mentors.
In a sense, yes, but their information is always tailored to the seeker's current level of understanding.
So they meet you where you are.
Exactly. And the goal is to support spiritual evolution through practices like meditation and service to others.
Okay, so no shortcuts or instant enlightenment.
Not quite. It's about gradual growth and understanding.
And then there's this idea that each entity is a potential polarized portion of an other self.
Yes, the very intriguing concept that ties into the theme of interconnectedness.
So we're all part of something larger.
Precisely. And the balancing of our physical sensations is linked to finding equilibrium between love and wisdom.
Love and wisdom.
Yes, or what they call positive and negative polarity.
Okay, so it's not about getting rid of one or the other.
No, it's about finding the right balance between them, allowing what's lacking to come into being.
This is like yin and yang.
A perfect analogy. It's about harmonizing those complementary forces within us.
And what about vital energy?
Well, they define vital energy as the integrated energy levels of mind, body, and spirit.
So all three aspects working together.
Exactly. And it requires these complexes to vibrate in a useful way.
What does that mean?
It means they're aligned and functioning harmoniously.
Okay, so like a well-oiled machine.
Exactly. And while willpower can temporarily compensate for a lack of vital energy, it's not a sustainable solution.
So it's about addressing the root cause, not just masking the symptoms.
Exactly.
And what about this concept of harvest?
Right. So in the law of one cosmology, there's this cyclical process of harvest.
Like reaping what you've sown.
Sort of. It's about entities graduating from one density to another based on their predominant polarity.
Polarity, like positive or negative.
Exactly. So those who are predominantly positive move to fourth density on this planet,
Okay.
while those who are predominantly negative move to another planet suited to their polarity.
So there are different destinations based on your spiritual orientation.
Yes, and those who haven't sufficiently polarized move to another third density planet.
To keep learning and growing.
Precisely, it's all about continuing the journey of evolution.
And what about these wanderers you mentioned earlier?
Ah, yes. Wanderers are entities who've come from higher densities to help humanity.
So they're like volunteers from higher realms.
In a sense, yes. And they often feel a deep sense of purpose and mission here on Earth.
And what about individuals from other third-density planets?
Well, they can also participate in the harvest process here on Earth.
So it's like a cosmic melting pot.
In a way, yes, with beings from different planets coming together to learn and evolve.
That's pretty amazing.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on, Rock also talked about the mechanism of healing.
Yes, specifically healing involving a crystallized healer.
Crystallized healer.
It's basically an individual with a highly refined and balanced energy field.
Okay, so like a spiritual master,
You could say that, and they act as a conduit for healing energy.
like a channel.
Exactly, but their own balanced energy centers are crucial.
So it's not just about channeling external energy.
No, it's also about the healer's own inner alignment and purity.
And they mentioned spiraling light energy from a small pyramid.
Yes, one too small to physically enter.
Okay, so what happens with this mini pyramid?
Well, Ra says it interacts with the individual's energy field, irradiating their cells, and the time-space yellow ray body.
Time-space yellow ray body. What's that?
It's like an energetic blueprint that exists in the time-space realm.
Okay,
And this irradiation is likened to the effects of sunlight.
so it's like a spiritual sunbath.
In a way, yes, it's about infusing the physical and energetic bodies with healing light.
And what about these temptations faced by positively oriented entities?
Ah, yes. That's another important aspect of the law of one perspective.
So even those on the positive path face challenges.
Absolutely. It's not all smooth sailing. There are tests and trials along the way.
And what kind of temptations do they face?
Well, for example, there are temptations from fourth and fifth density Orion leaders.
Those Orion entities again?
Yes, they try to lure positively oriented beings away from a path of service to others.
Oh, so like trying to corrupt them.
In a way, yes, tempting them with power or self-aggrandizement.
And what happens if they resist?
Well, unfortunately, Ram mentions these extreme measures called magical means.
Magical means, what does that mean?
It's basically a way of using energy to harm or even eliminate those who resist.
That's pretty dark.
It is, but it highlights the intensity of the spiritual battle that's taking place.
Okay, and what about these archetypes?
Yes, archetypes are fundamental aspects of the one infinite creation.
Like universal patterns or symbols.
Precisely, and they teach us through intuition.
So how do we access these archetypes?
Well, the spirit acts as a kind of shuttle.
A shuttle.
Yes, based on the seeker's harmonized electromagnetic configuration.
So our energy state determines which archetypes we connect with.
Exactly, and it's all about aligning ourselves with those universal patterns.
And what about this first distortion of the law of one free will?
Right, free will is paramount, but it can be misused.
Oh, how so?
Well, negatively polarized entities, they misalign the mind-body-spirit complex
Okay.
into what's called negative time-space.
Negative time-space. What's that?
It's like a distorted reflection of the true reality, a place where negativity reigns.
And how does positive polarity differ?
Positive polarity sees love in all aspects of creation.
So it's a fundamentally different way of perceiving reality.
Exactly. And while negative polarity uses free will to manipulate and control,
Positive polarity uses it to serve and uplift.
precisely it's about choosing love over fear, unity over separation.
And where does the higher self fit into all of this?
The higher self resides in mid-sixth density.
Sixth density. Wow, that's high up.
It is, but the key concept here is that entities exist simultaneously at all levels of being.
So we're not just limited to our current level of awareness.
Not at all. We're multidimensional beings with aspects of ourselves existing across the entire spectrum of densities.
That's mind-boggling. And what about negative time-space?
Well, it's described as being analogous to a specific vibration of space-time.
So it's like a frequency within the physical realm.
Exactly, and entering it leads to the appropriate space-time experience for incarnation.
So it's like a gateway to a specific kind of reality.
In a way, yes, it's how we manifest our experiences based on our vibrational alignment.
And finally, what about this magical personality?
Ah, yes. That's the key for advanced spiritual work.
What does it involve?
It encompasses emotional will, polarity, and purity.
So it's about aligning your will with your spiritual purpose.
Exactly, and purifying your thoughts and intentions.
And this magical personality, it's important whether or not you use sound vibrations.
That's right. It's the foundation for any kind of advanced spiritual practice.
Okay, and just to wrap up the key takeaway from the Law of One,
It's this vision of an interconnected universe where energy and consciousness are deeply intertwined.
Right, and where spiritual evolution is driven by understanding and embodying this principle of unity.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the divine spark within ourselves and within all beings.
Okay, so we've explored these two very different but incredibly complex
We
perspectives.
have, and now for the fun part.
Yes, the part where we try to connect the dots.
I love this part.
So the big question is, could there be any connections, any underlying similarities between quantum mechanics and the law of one?
It's a bold question, but that's what makes it exciting.
Right, so let's start with energy.
Okay.
The law of one talks about this in-streaming light, this vital energy that flows through us.
Yes.
Could that be related in some way to the energy levels and energy transfers that physics describes?
It's a big leap, but both frameworks are fundamentally concerned with energy.
Right, and how it transforms and interacts.
Exactly. So maybe they're both describing different aspects of the same underlying phenomenon.
Maybe, and what about vibration and frequency?
Ah, yes. That's a very interesting connection.
So in quantum mechanics, we see that quantum jumps have specific frequencies associated with them.
Right, and those frequencies determine the color of light that's emitted.
Exactly. And in the law of one consciousness, and even different densities of being are described in terms of vibration.
So could there be a deeper connection there?
Right, like maybe frequency and vibration are fundamental properties of both the physical and the spiritual realms.
It's a fascinating possibility, and it raises the question of whether those energy centers, those chakras,
Yes.
could they be related to the way that atoms and molecules selectively absorb and emit photons?
So like a spiritual resonance.
Exactly. Maybe
Yeah.
our chakras are tuned to specific frequencies of spiritual light.
And then there's the concept of jumps itself.
Right.
In the quantum world, energy changes happen in these discrete, instantaneous leaps, those quantum jumps.
Yes.
And in the law of one, could moments of sudden spiritual insight or understanding,
Be seen as analogous jumps on a higher level.
like a quantum leap in consciousness?
Exactly. Maybe those aha moments are actually tiny quantum jumps in our spiritual evolution.
It's a really cool idea. Now, it's important to remember that these are all speculations.
Of course, we're venturing into uncharted territory here.
But even just contemplating these connections can be really mind-expanding.
Absolutely, especially for someone like you who loves exploring different perspectives.
Right. And who appreciates those aha moments?
Those are the best, and it highlights the fact that even though quantum mechanics and the law of one use very different language,
And methodologies.
they're both grappling with the fundamental nature of reality.
And the processes of change and transformation that occur within it.
Exactly, whether it's at the level of subatomic particles or the evolution of consciousness.
Okay, so to recap from the scientific perspective, we have this world of quantum jumps shaping everything from color to life itself.
And from the metaphysical perspective, we have this interconnected web of energy and consciousness driven by unity and evolution.
And while they might seem worlds apart, both perspectives emphasize the role of energy and jumps in shaping our reality.
Precisely whether those jumps are literal or metaphorical.
And that leads us to our final question for you.
Okay, hit me with it.
Could the principles that govern the smallest parts of our physical reality and the principles that govern consciousness and spiritual evolution be more connected than we currently understand?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And maybe energy is the key that could one day unlock a deeper, more unified understanding.
It's a tantalizing thought, and it certainly gives us a lot to ponder.
Well, thank you so much for bringing these fascinating sources to the deep dive.
It's been a pleasure exploring them with you.
And thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. We hope it sparked some new ideas and inspired you to keep digging deeper.
Keep asking those big questions.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll have some answers.
Or even more exciting questions.
That's the beauty of it. The journey never really ends.